So first, before we do our speech, we have a bone to pick with the class of 2017, and that is, what was anyone thinking putting me and Charisse on the same stage and entrusting us with the power to address a huge body of people at our own discretion?
In the past couple of weeks, a lot of you congratulated us and expressed how excited you were to hear us speak. And we kind of had to wonder, what exactly is it you were all expecting? What are you so excited about? At our nominated commencement speaker meeting, they asked us how the two of us wanted to go about presenting a speech to you guys as our self-described unit. And it seemed like they and many of you guys were expecting some sort of performance art.
In Hampshire spirit. So initially our idea was to do interactive Mad Libs with the redacted parts of whatever secret government commission report is currently relevant and kind of spot translate it into ASL, but someone would Google like the WikiHow for the sign as we were doing it, so literally word by word, or a dramatic 10-minute reenactment, because that's how long we're supposed to talk, the Tyra Banks Be Quiet Tiffany monologue. But that received a lot of positive feedback from our focus groups, because this is Hampshire and we do participant-based research. So, you know, who knows what's in store for all of you. Oh my God, I haven't been talking to the mic this whole time.
Can you hear us?
Hey.
Excellent. Okay. They had us watch all these videos of successful speeches from the past off of which we were supposed to base this, most of which included students lovingly jabbing at Hampshire and celebrating its quirkiness and our own quirkiness, probably just to drive home the point that we shouldn't do any performance art, and any jabs that we make should be done playfully and effectually so as not to make anyone uncomfortable.
That being said, we know that there are others of you who expect us to roast Hampshire College about some real stuff. Obviously, we do have something to say, but our preface to all of this is, and this is the most booty hole Hampshire thing that we will say up here today, is that political performativity at a liberal institution is at best corny and at most violent, and that is not what we're about here today.
At a certain level, discourse cannot make up for our actions, and our interpersonal relationships are all we have left. They are the vehicles through which we exist in all spaces, and we feel very strongly about this, not only because of the roles and the spaces that we've occupied here at Hampshire, but because of what we did in our Div 3s.
Despite the really stark differences in our disciplines and academic training, both Charisse and I ended up writing about community, the value and worth of bodies within communities, and what it means to live inside our marginalized, gendered, queered, racialized, and disposable bodies, and what it means to belong somewhere. And so we are going to talk about that, but first, we have to give some obligatory thank yous, because there's absolutely no way either of us would be standing up here, having been elected by all of you, thank you so much, without the support of some key figures. Turn page. Considering my tumultuous road to this stage today, as many of you know about, my first thanks goes to my committee for 3 years now, Jennifer Hamilton and Marlene Freed, for passing me.
I thank you too for that.
More specifically, by passing me, I mean continuing to believe in me against all odds and literally keeping me alive through some of the most devastating moments long enough to pass. This was not in your job description, and I will always be grateful. To Kira, Sid, and Daiki, to Sarah and Alexi, whose friendships and conversations gave life to much of this speech. And Lauren Gerritsen, who is acutely responsible for forcing me to send the email that saved my Div 3 and allowed me to graduate. Mod 102, the pals at large. And lastly, my family, who trekked out here today and who I now know where they are locationally, my mom and my sisters. Thank you for saving my life every day. And this guy.
First and foremost, thank you to my parents. You always may take credit for all of my successes. From day one, everything good in me has been a product of everything that is good in you. I love you. Thank you to the rest of my family, biological and chosen, of equal importance. And thank you to my committee, Lourdes and Pam, for allowing me to be stubborn about my goals, but teaching me to be flexible about my methods.
She did a nice Div 3. I liked it. And despite it being a foolish choice given the dubiously appropriate nature of our immediate speech ideas, thank you all, Hampshire College, class of 2017, for trusting us enough to represent you up here on your day, not just for putting us on this stage right now, but for making it here. What the heck, right? We're all here, we did it, and thank you for sharing this road and this space with us and with each other.
We are extremely proud of you for having made it through so much within and outside of Hampshire to make it here today.
We're thinking of those who did not make it here today. We acknowledge that some of us had to make severe sacrifices and still barely made it.
We acknowledge that the playing field here is anything but level, and we're celebrating those who survived and thrived in this place who did not do enough to support you. Today is for you most of all.
I'm just clapping. So, in celebrating these triumphs, we'd like to share with you what we, as a self-described unit, life partners, best friends, chosen family, have learned about love, solidarity, resistance, and most of all, survival.
Beginning in our second year at Hampshire, we both worked as resident advisors, many of you know. And something that came up so often for both of us in that role was the issue of community. As RAs, we were supposed to be community organizers and builders, and we worked so hard at that task, like all of the other RAs. Like, let me tell you, this staff works
This stands for
so much that you don't even see.
Democratically elected senior RA. We made these ourselves.
Like most of you, the RAs at Hampshire acknowledge that Hampshire College severely lacks any sort of in-group or community feeling. And we were supposed to know how to respond when students and administrators would ask us, why do you think it's so hard to build community at Hampshire? And furthermore, more importantly, we were supposed to figure out what to do about that.
So I guess it's safe to say that we spent a lot of time thinking about community and the impact of living without communities or with strained communities. But we've learned that surviving and thriving is about more than building community. It is about love. We hear a lot about radical self-care here at Hampshire, and we talk a lot about taking space for ourselves and cutting out toxic ties. And while we have every right to do that, we think that there's a way in which this facilitates we become trapped in our own selves, in our own bodies, and in our own heads.
The way we care for ourselves and the way we care for our communities cannot be disconnected. Self-care, community care is about deciding to be vulnerable enough, to be humble enough, to care deeply enough to give everyone you love everything that you've got. It's about deciding to do the hard thing for the people you love, loving them anyway, and manifesting unconditional love by showing it to each other.
Holding people through their ugliest moments, even when those moments last years, and holding people who were never meant to survive this world. That is the most decolonial, anti-capitalist thing we can do. Never letting ourselves be complacent with how much care and labor that we are doing for our most politically and socially uncared for Black, queer, trans, femme families. That stuff is what's real, and that is how we care for ourselves, by caring for others.
There are systems of power that structure the way we form relationships, bonds, and family. But once you cut through that kind of love is the strongest resistance we have left. The kind of love that discourages fragility, that challenges ignorance, that sees our potential and pushes us forward and still protects what is vulnerable.
This world was not made for some of us, and some of us more than others. When we're talking about the political heart of what we're saying here today, we're not talking about what anyone wrote their theses on. We're talking about what it means to be held and survive in this space and place.
We're talking about taking a good look around ourselves and critically interrogating who in our lives are being cared for and who is caring for us, and subsidizing the labor it takes to survive in between.
We're talking about what it means to be an institution committed to social justice when many of the faculty and staff barely even earn enough to live in the area and haven't received a substantial raise in 10 years.
We're talking about embodying the philosophy we project. We're talking about respecting and carrying our faculty, staff, and students of color as significant members of our community, not just bodies to add to a pamphlet or a website in the interest of selling our multicultural, diverse, liberal arts experience.
We are talking about doing the hard thing, about asking more for ourselves every day to show up for each other and to be vulnerable enough to allow people to show up for us.
To cultivate spaces that feel safe enough to...
God damn it. I turned the page too soon.
To cultivate spaces that feel safe enough to ask for what we need, and to sometimes, when we don't have it in us to do that, to not have to ask and trust that our people will show up for us anyway.
Here the page turns. We're talking about being real with ourselves, that the people who need the most care are sometimes the hardest to care for. It means bearing witness to each other and how we suffer and also where we keep our joy, and that not all of us occupy these spaces in the same way.
We cannot allow ourselves to subscribe to the belief that we don't owe anyone anything.
We cannot always self-care when it means leaving someone behind.
We would not be here, none of us would be here, without those along the way who decided to do the hard thing, the sometimes nearly impossible thing, and decide to love us anyway.
None of us are entitled to a good life such that we are allowed room to step away from someone who needs us. We all have something to offer each other, and we all have got to give each other everything that we've got. We are obligated to all of our kinships, our bonds, our supports that give us life literally and figuratively and carry us through time after time.
The kind of love that challenges us out of respect for us. The kind of love that encourages us to move through discomfort in the service of growth, but does not expect us to move alone. That kind of love is what we owe this day to, what we owe all of our lives to, and what we hope to manifest in all the spaces that we will go from here.
We are obligated to hold each other. Where you find your families, where you build your home, that is your orientation to justice, and that is your life. And that is the most political thing that you can do, to be deliberate with who we love and to love them with everything we have left. Never forget about that.
That's all we got.